Don't touch that wolf, the patrolman warned. By order of the Alpha King, any rogue found near Blackridge is to be killed on sight. Sadie Whitmore tightened her grip on the lantern and stared past him into the snow. Something huge moved beside the frozen creek. Not running, dragging itself. The patrolman had already turned his horse toward the pack house, leaving her alone with the wind and a rule she had never been important enough to question. Sadie should have gone home. She was an Omega with a crooked fence, a leaking roof, and a talent for tripping over perfectly flat ground. No one expected bravery from her. Most days, no one expected anything at all. Then the animal lifted its head. A giant black wolf lay caught between the pines, one foreleg pinned by a silver trap. His eyes found hers through the storm. Dark gold. Furious. Intelligent. Sadie's breath stopped. A pulse of heat flashed around her wrist, sharp enough to make her drop the lantern into the snow. The wolf's ears rose. For one impossible second, the woods went silent. No wind. No creak. No heartbeat but hers. You felt that too, she whispered. The wolf bared his teeth. Sadie swallowed. Right. Not a friendly conversation. She stepped closer anyway. He was larger than any wolf she had seen, nearly 5 feet at the shoulder, his black coat soaked with snow and mud. A pale scar crossed his left shoulder, half hidden beneath the trap's chain. Silver weakened werewolves. Too much could drive them feral. Pack law said she should call the guards. Pack experience told her the guards would arrive with weapons, not medicine. I'm going to open this, she said, kneeling several feet away. You can bite me afterward, but I'd appreciate it if you waited until I'm done. The wolf watched every movement. Sadie wrapped her scarf around her hand and reached for the release. The metal burned through the wool. She slipped, landed hard on one knee, and muttered, "Great. Very heroic." A low sound rolled from the wolf's chest. Not quite a growl. Almost offended amusement. Sadie glared at him. "You're welcome." She found a fallen branch, forced it beneath the spring, and pushed with both hands. The trap snapped open. The wolf surged upright. Sadie fell backward, certain she had made the last mistake of her life. Instead, he stood over her, breathing hard, his muzzle inches from her face. Cedar, cold rain, smoke, a scent that did not belong to any rogue. Heat circled her wrist again. Somewhere beneath the fur, a royal mark flashed gold, then vanished. Sadie stared. The wolf stepped away before she could touch it. "Who are you?" she asked. He looked toward the distant lights of Blackridge, then back at her cottage beyond the trees. His injured leg shook. Sadie sighed, pulled her small wooden cart from the creek bank, and lowered the handle. "Fine, but if you destroy my furniture, you're sleeping outside." The wolf climbed in with the dignity of a king boarding a carriage. 40 miles away, in the empty royal hall, the Alpha King's ring began to glow. By the time Sadie pulled the cart through her cottage door, her boots were soaked, her fingers were numb, and the giant black wolf had somehow managed to look offended by the entire rescue. "You are welcome," she told him as he stepped onto the wooden floor and shook snow across half the room. Water hit the walls, the table, and the basket of clean laundry she had folded that morning. Sadie closed her eyes. "Of course you did." The wolf limped toward the fireplace as if he owned the place, then lowered himself onto her best rug. It was not a large rug. Most of him did not fit. Sadie hung her coat beside the door and studied him from a safe distance. Up close, he looked even more impossible. His shoulders were nearly level with her kitchen counter, and his black coat carried streaks of mud, pine needles, and the sharp metallic scent of silver. She filled a wooden wash tub with warm water, adding crushed wintergreen and dried sage from the shelf. "This is going to hurt less if you cooperate." One dark gold eye opened. That was not a request for an opinion. The wolf rose slowly, crossed the room, and stopped beside the tub. Then he looked at it. He looked at Sadie. Then back at the tub. "I know," she said. "It is too small. My cottage was not designed for royal-sized wildlife." His ears moved at the word royal. Sadie noticed, but before she could think about it, he placed one paw inside the water and immediately pulled it back. "You faced a silver trap, but warm water is where you draw the line." A low rumble came from his chest. "Fine. We can both be stubborn." It took 10 minutes, 2 pieces of smoked beef, and 1 broken stool before the wolf finally climbed into the tub. Water spilled over the sides and spread across the floor. Sadie knelt beside him, trying not to laugh as his wet fur flattened around his face. You look much less terrifying now. He stared at her with such wounded dignity that she covered her smile with one hand. She cleaned the injured leg carefully, washing away the silver residue without touching the torn skin more than necessary. Each time pain tightened his body, the strange warmth returned around her wrist. Her scent changed with it, soft and steady, carrying through the cottage like fresh bread and wildflowers after rain. The wolf's breathing slowed. His shoulders relaxed. Sadie felt it happen and froze. No werewolf had ever responded to her scent that way. Omegas were taught that their presence could calm a pack, but no one had ever called Sadie calming. Clumsy, yes. Forgettable, often. Useful only when the herb room needed cleaning. Never this. What are you? She whispered. The wolf turned his head and pressed his nose lightly against her wrist. The contact sent a quiet pulse through her chest. Not pain. Recognition. Sadie pulled back, startled, and knocked the soap into the tub. The wolf sneezed as bubbles covered his muzzle. She laughed before she could stop herself. For the first time, the sound did not feel lonely inside the cottage. Later, after she wrapped his leg and dried as much of his coat as she could, Sadie spread an old quilt near the fire. You sleep there. I sleep in my room. We respect boundaries. The wolf waited until she curled into the chair beside the hearth. Then he ignored the quilt, crossed the room, and lowered his massive head across her feet. Sadie should have moved him. Instead, she rested one hand between his ears and fell asleep. Outside, the storm deepened. Inside, the wolf stayed awake, watching the door. Just before midnight, the royal mark beneath his fur glowed once more, and 40 miles away, every guard in the Alpha King's palace realized their king was missing. Sadie woke with one foot numb, one hand buried in thick black fur, and the uncomfortable feeling that someone was watching her. She opened her eyes. The wolf was already awake, his dark gold gaze fixed on her face. Good morning to you too, she murmured. He lifted his head, and the sudden loss of warmth made the cottage feel colder. For a few seconds, Sadie forgot the silver trap, the royal mark, and every rule she had broken. Then a horn sounded from the direction of Blackridge Pack House. One long note. Too short. An official summons. Sadie sat up so quickly that her blanket slid to the floor. That is never good. The wolf rose beside her, favoring his injured leg less than he had the night before. Sadie checked the bandage and found it clean. You are healing too fast. His ears turned toward the window. Another horn call carried through the trees. Sadie crossed the room, pulled the curtain aside, and saw patrol riders moving along the distant road. You need to stay here, she said. No growling at strangers. No breaking furniture. And absolutely no eating anyone. The wolf gave her a flat look. I am serious. She left him a bowl of water, 2 thick slices of smoked beef, and a warning pointed at his nose. I will be back before noon. Blackridge Pack House stood 3 miles away, built from gray stone and dark timber at the base of the mountain. By the time Sadie arrived, the main hall was already crowded. Alphas stood nearest the raised platform. Betas filled the center. Omegas remained along the walls, where they could hear every order without being invited into the conversation. Sadie slipped inside, carrying a basket of dried herbs for the infirmary. She almost made it across the room before someone stepped into her path. Laurel Dane, daughter of one of Blackridge's senior betas, looked down at the mud on Sadie's skirt. Did you sleep in the woods? Not intentionally. Sadie tried to move past her. Laurel bumped the basket with one elbow. Bundles of sage and wintergreen scattered across the floor. A few people laughed. No one helped. Sadie crouched and began gathering them. Careful, Laurel said. The Alpha King arrives tomorrow. We cannot have the halls smelling like wet dog and desperation. Sadie's hand stopped over a sprig of sage. Wet dog. Behind her, the entire hall went silent. Beta Garrick Hale had stepped onto the platform. He was broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and known for delivering bad news as if it were someone else's fault. By royal command, Blackridge is under investigation, he announced. Silver traps were found on protected land. The Alpha King believes someone inside this pack placed them. Uneasy whispers spread through the room. Sadie kept her eyes down. Garrick raised one hand. King Callum Voss will arrive before nightfall. Every cabin, storehouse, and outer property may be searched. Anyone sheltering a rogue wolf will answer directly to the crown. Sadie's stomach dropped. Laurel noticed her expression. You look nervous. I always look nervous. No. Usually you look confused. Sadie gathered the last bundle and stood. At that moment, a sharp pulse of heat closed around her wrist. The same invisible circle she had felt beside the frozen creek. Her breath caught. Far beyond the walls, something answered with a low, distant howl. Every wolf in the hall turned toward the northern windows. Garrick's face changed. Just for a second. Recognition. Fear. Sadie left before anyone could study her too closely. She ran the entire 3 miles home, nearly slipping twice on the frozen path. The cottage door was shut. The bowl was empty. The smoked beef was gone. So was the wolf. Midnight, she called, using the name he had clearly hated. No answer. The old quilt lay beside the fire, still warm. Sadie searched the kitchen, the bedroom, and the narrow space behind the pantry, although no creature his size could possibly hide there. Then she saw something gleaming on the chair. A gold coat button engraved with a crown above a wolf's head. The royal seal of Callum Voss. Before Sadie could pick it up, 3 heavy knocks struck the cottage door. The 3 knocks came again, slow and heavy enough to shake dust from the frame. Sadie closed her fingers around the gold button and shoved it into her apron pocket. 1 second. She kicked the damp towel beneath the table, pushed the oversized wash tub behind a curtain, and opened the door just wide enough to look outside. The man standing on her porch was taller than the doorway. Snow rested on the shoulders of his black coat, and a royal guard waited several yards behind him near the tree line. Dark hair, hard features, eyes the exact shade of deep gold that had watched her beside the frozen creek. Sadie forgot how to breathe. Alpha King Callum Voss looked past her into the cottage. "I am searching for an injured wolf." His voice was calm, but it carried the kind of authority that made a room feel smaller. Sadie tightened her grip on the door. "There are many wolves in Blackridge. Not like this one." His gaze moved to the scratches on the floor, the empty bowl near the fireplace, and one long black hair caught on her sleeve. "He is unusually large." That sounds inconvenient. One corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. "May I come in?" Every instinct told her that refusing the Alpha King was a terrible idea. Another instinct, quieter but stronger, reminded her that this was her home. "Are you asking as the king or as a guest?" His eyes settled on her face. For the first time, his expression changed. Not anger. Something closer to surprise. "As a guest." Sadie stepped aside. Callum entered carefully, though his shoulders still brushed the wooden beam. The cottage had never felt so small. He stood near the fireplace and breathed in once. His hands went still at his sides. Sadie caught the scent of cedar, cold rain, and smoke. The same scent that had clung to wet black fur. Heat tightened around her wrist. Callum's head turned sharply toward her. For one dangerous second, the gold in his eyes brightened. Then he looked away. "Did the wolf hurt you?" "No." "Did he threaten you?" "Only my furniture." Callum glanced at the broken stool. "I see." Sadie watched him study the old quilt beside the fire. There was something personal in the way his attention lingered on it. "You know him," she said. "I know what he is capable of." "That was not my question." Silence filled the cottage. Outside, the guard shifted in the snow. Callum walked toward the washtub curtain. Sadie moved in front of it. "There is nothing back there." "Then you will not mind if I look." "I mind on principle." His gaze dropped to her hand, where faint warmth still circled her wrist beneath the skin. He saw it. Sadie knew he did. His face remained controlled, but his heartbeat changed. She could hear it from 2 feet away. "You are lying to the crown," he said quietly. "You entered my cottage as a guest, and I am trying to keep you alive." The words came out sharper than anything else he had said. Sadie stared at him. Callum seemed to regret the admission immediately. He stepped back, creating space between them. "The wolf you found may be connected to the silver traps. Until I know who placed them, no one can be trusted." "Including you?" His jaw tightened. "Especially me." Before she could ask what that meant, Callum reached down and picked up the damp towel she had failed to hide completely. Black fur clung to the fabric. He lifted it closer, and the scent of Sadie's herbs rose between them. His pupils widened. The air changed. Something ancient and wordless pulled tight inside her chest. Callum set the towel down with deliberate care. "No one else enters this cottage," he said. "Not the patrol. Not your beta. Not even my guards." Sadie folded her arms. "You cannot turn my home into a royal outpost." "I can." His voice softened, but somehow became more dangerous. "I am choosing not to." He stepped through the doorway, then paused beneath the falling snow. Without looking back, he said, "Lock the door tonight, Sadie Whitmore." She had never told him her name. Callum returned the next morning with a carpenter, 2 royal guards, and an excuse so weak that Sadie almost respected it. "Your eastern window is unsafe," he said from her porch. Sadie looked at the window. It has survived 12 winters. The frame is warped. So is half of Blackridge. The carpenter stared at the ground, wisely pretending not to hear. Callum stepped inside without removing his coat, then seemed to remember their last conversation. He stopped. "May I?" Sadie moved aside. "You are already standing in my kitchen." That is not an answer. She studied him for a moment. "Yes, you may come in." Something in his shoulders eased. The guards remained outside while the carpenter inspected the window, the roof, and somehow the back fence. Callum walked through the cottage as if searching for signs of the black wolf, though his attention kept returning to the old quilt beside the fireplace. Sadie poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. "Does the Crown usually repair windows during criminal investigations?" "Only important windows. Mine faces a chicken coop. A poorly secured chicken coop." Sadie handed him a mug. His fingers brushed hers, and warmth circled her wrist. Callum froze. The coffee trembled once in his hand, then steadied. "You felt that," she said. "The mug is hot." "That is not what I meant." His gaze held hers, guarded and unreadable. Before he could answer, the carpenter called from outside, and Callum turned away too quickly. By noon, the window had been replaced, the fence straightened, and 2 loose roof shingles repaired. Callum claimed each task was connected to royal security. Sadie claimed he was a terrible liar. He left before sunset. Midnight returned after dark. Sadie opened the door to find the giant wolf sitting on her porch with a fresh bandage around his injured leg. Not her bandage. This one was black linen, tied in a clean military knot. "Interesting," she said. His ears shifted back. "You disappeared, the Alpha King arrived, and now you come home wearing royal medical supplies." Midnight walked past her with great dignity. "That is not suspicious at all." He went directly to the fireplace and dropped onto the rug. Sadie shut the door, then noticed a leather pouch near his front paw. Inside were dried venison strips, a small jar of rare silver leaf ointment, and a new bar of cedar soap. She held it up. "Did you steal this?" Midnight looked offended. "Of course not. Kings probably send soap to every strange omega living alone in the woods." He rested his head on his paws. Sadie sat beside him and carefully changed the bandage. The wound was nearly closed. Too nearly. "You heal like an alpha," she murmured. Midnight watched her face. She could feel the question growing between them, but asking it aloud felt dangerous. Instead, she told him about the pack house, about Laurel knocking over her herbs, about how everyone had laughed while she picked them up. "I know it should not bother me anymore," she said, "but sometimes I wonder how long you can be invisible before you start believing you deserve it." Midnight lifted his head and pressed his nose against her palm. The bond warmed, gentle this time. Sadie smiled despite herself. "You are easier to talk to than he is." The wolf went perfectly still. "The king," she clarified. "He looks at me like he is trying to solve a problem." Midnight released a low sound. "Do not be jealous. He is irritating." The sound deepened. Sadie laughed and leaned against the chair. The next afternoon, Callum returned to inspect the repaired window. The afternoon after that, he returned to ask whether she had noticed unfamiliar tracks. On the 3rd day, he brought a map. On the 4th, he brought nothing at all. He simply sat at her small kitchen table, drank coffee, and listened while she sorted herbs. Then a young patrolman arrived with a delivery and placed a friendly hand on Sadie's shoulder. A growl rolled through the trees outside. Every bird went silent. Sadie turned toward the window. Callum stood beside her, staring at the patrolman's hand. His eyes had changed to dark gold. The patrolman removed his hand from Sadie's shoulder before Callum said a word. The change in the king's eyes was enough. Dark gold burned around his pupils, and the room seemed to tighten around him. "Your delivery is complete," Callum said. His voice was quiet. The patrolman swallowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Then leave." The young man backed through the doorway so quickly that he nearly missed the step. Sadie waited until his footsteps faded down the path, then turned to Callum. "Was that necessary?" His gaze stayed on the open door. "He touched you without asking. He handed me a sack of flour." His hand was not on the flour. Sadie folded her arms. You do realize that sounded jealous. It was a security concern. Of course it was. Callum looked toward the forest, where the growl had come from, and something troubled crossed his face. Sadie noticed the tension in his jaw and the way one hand pressed briefly against his ribs. Are you sick? No, you are also a terrible liar. He stepped away from her, but not before she caught his scent again. Cedar, cold rain, smoke. Beneath it was the same faint metallic bitterness that had clung to Midnight's wound. Sadie moved closer. Hold still. Callum's entire body went rigid. Why? Because you smell like silver. Silence. Then he gave her a measured look. That is not a sentence most people would say to their king. Most people probably have better survival instincts. She reached for his sleeve. Callum caught her wrist before she touched him. The bond flared between them, warm and sudden. His breathing slowed. The gold in his eyes dimmed. Sadie felt the change as clearly as if a storm had settled inside his chest. Callum released her at once. Do not do that again. You grabbed me. I know. His voice had gone rough. He stared at her wrist as if it held an answer he did not want. Sadie rubbed the spot with her thumb. Midnight calms down when I touch him too. Callum looked away. That was answer enough to sharpen every suspicion she had been avoiding. Before she could press him, one of the royal guards called from outside. Fresh tracks had been found near the creek. Callum left with a warning for Sadie to stay inside, which she ignored 10 minutes later. The tracks led behind her cottage, not toward the creek. Deep boot prints circled the fence and stopped beneath her bedroom window. Someone had been watching the house. By evening, royal workers arrived without explanation. They repaired the back gate, reinforced the window locks, replaced the broken porch rail, and stacked enough firewood to last a month. Callum returned near sunset to inspect their work. Sadie stood on the porch, hands on her hips. You cannot keep changing my home without asking. Someone came within 10 feet of your window last night. Then tell me that. Do not make decisions for me and call it protection. Callum's expression hardened, but not with anger. You are right. The simple admission caught her off guard. He turned to the guards. No further work without Miss Whitmore's permission. They nodded. Sadie studied him. Alpha Kings were not known for correcting themselves, especially in front of their men. Thank you, she said. Callum gave a small nod, then swayed almost imperceptibly. Sadie caught his arm. The moment she touched him, his pain moved through the bond like cold fire. A flash struck her mind. Silver veins spreading beneath black fur, a locked chamber, a hand wearing a council ring. Callum pulled free. What did you see? I do not know. Sadie looked toward the cottage window, where the last light reflected off something on the table. The silver fragment she had removed from Midnight's wound. She carried it outside and wiped away the dried ointment with her apron. Beneath the tarnish, a symbol appeared. A crown surrounded by 12 wolves. Callum's face went still. Sadie looked from the royal council seal to him. This was inside Midnight. For the first time since she had met him, the Alpha King looked afraid. Put it away, he said. Why? Because whoever placed that trap was not hunting a rogue. His eyes lifted to the dark trees beyond her fence. They were hunting me. They were hunting me. Callum's words settled over the porch like another layer of cold. Sadie stared at the silver fragment in her palm, then at the royal seal carved into its surface. Midnight is you. Callum did not answer. He did not need to. The storm broke before either of them moved. Wind slammed through the trees, rattling the shutters and throwing snow against the cottage windows. Callum doubled over, one hand gripping the porch rail. The gold in his eyes spread until almost no darkness remained. Go inside, he said. Not without you, Sadie. His voice carried the full weight of an alpha command, but the bond beneath it shook with fear. Lock the door. She took one step toward him. Tell me the truth. His breathing turned uneven. There is no time. A flash of silver moved beneath the skin at his throat. Callum stumbled into the cottage, knocking the table sideways. Sadie followed and shut the door against the wind. He dropped to one knee near the fireplace. His coat tore at the shoulder as his body shifted, not with violence, but with the painful force of something he could no longer control. A moment later, the giant black wolf stood where the Alpha King had been. Midnight. The same scar. The same dark gold eyes. The same black bandage tied in a military knot. Sadie could not move. Every private word she had spoken beside the fire returned at once. Her loneliness. Her humiliation at the pack house. The foolish way she had admitted that Callum irritated her. He had heard all of it. The wolf lowered his head, watching her carefully. You knew, she whispered. Every time you came here as him, you knew what I had told you as midnight. He took one slow step closer. Sadie backed away. The bond pulled tight inside her chest, warm and pleading. That made the betrayal worse. Do not, she said. The wolf stopped immediately. Another shift passed over him, and Callum reappeared on the floor, pale and breathing hard. He reached for the edge of the table to steady himself, but did not come closer. The first night, I did not know where I was when I changed back, he said. After that, I should have told you. But you did not. No, why? Callum looked toward the old quilt by the fire. Because in this house, you spoke to me without fear. You called me stubborn. You made me sleep on the floor. You treated my wound before you knew whether I deserved it. His voice dropped. I have not had anything like that in years. Sadie's eyes burned, but she refused to look away. So you kept taking it. The words struck him harder than anger would have. Yes. The honesty left no place for either of them to hide. Was any of it real? She asked. Every moment. Was I calming you because of this bond? Or did you actually care about me? Callum's jaw tightened. Both can be true. That is not good enough. Thunder rolled beyond the roof. He rose slowly, keeping several feet between them. Then tell me what is. Sadie opened the door. Snow blew across the floor. Leave. The wolf inside him surged against the command. She saw it in his eyes, in the tension through his shoulders, in the way his fingers curled at his sides. He could have ordered her to reconsider. He could have claimed royal authority. Instead, he stepped past her into the storm. At the edge of the porch, he turned back. You gave me a choice when I was a beast in a trap, he said quietly. I will give you one now. Then the Alpha King walked into the dark, and for the first time since the frozen creek, the cottage felt empty. By morning, everyone in Blackridge knew the Alpha King had left Sadie Whitmore's cottage in the middle of a storm. By noon, the story had changed 3 times. She had poisoned him. She had rejected him. She had trapped him with an Omega's scent and demanded a place beside the throne. Sadie heard every version while standing in the pack infirmary, grinding dried willow bark with more force than necessary. Laurel Dane leaned against the doorway. You must be proud. Sadie did not look up. Of what? Getting his attention. Even if you could not keep it. The mortar slipped beneath Sadie's hand, scattering powder across the counter. A few workers nearby pretended not to listen. Leave, Laurel. Careful. People might think you have authority. Laurel smiled and walked away. Sadie cleaned the mess alone. Again, 40 miles north, Callum sat beneath the 12 banners of the royal hall while Everett Sloane explained why the kingdom needed a wedding. The Western Pacts are questioning your stability, Everett said. His silver council ring flashed as he placed a document on the long table. Callum stared at it without touching it. They are questioning rumors. Rumors become rebellion when a king disappears for days. Everett lowered his voice. Lady Meredith Kane is an alpha of suitable blood. Announce the engagement, and this embarrassment ends. The wolf inside Callum pushed against his control. Not because of Meredith. Because Sadie's scent was fading from his coat. Without it, the silver poison moved like ice beneath his skin. There will be no engagement, he said. Then explain the Omega. The entire council went still. Callum's gaze lifted. Choose your next words carefully. Everett smiled without warmth. Blackridge claims she used herbs to interfere with your judgment. If that accusation reaches the other packs, we will need to investigate her. Callum's fingers tightened beneath the table. He wanted to order guards to Sadie's cottage. He wanted walls around her, soldiers at every window, and every road sealed. He also remembered her voice. Do not make decisions for me and call it protection. No one approaches her without my direct permission, he said. Everett studied him. That sounds personal. It is a royal command. Back in Blackridge, Beta Garrick Hale arrived at the infirmary before sunset. He carried an official notice sealed in black wax. Sadie Whitmore, you are suspended from pack duties pending investigation. She stared at the paper. For treating an injured animal? For concealing a potential rogue and influencing the Alpha King. Influencing him how? Garrick did not meet her eyes. Your cottage will be searched tomorrow. Sadie's anger cut through the ache in her chest. The king ordered that no one enter my home. The king has returned to the capital. Blackridge answers to its own Beta in his absence. That was not entirely true, and they both knew it. Sadie took the notice, but refused to bow. Who reported me? Garrick's silence answered enough. Someone with access to the council seal wanted the silver fragment back. Someone wanted her blamed before she could speak. Sadie walked home beneath a sky heavy with snow. The cottage looked smaller without Midnight near the fire. His bowl remained beside the hearth. The old quilt still carried his scent. She hated that she missed him. She hated more that the bond told her he was in pain. A cold pulse moved beneath her ribs, distant but unmistakable. Callum. Sadie pressed a hand to her chest. You do not get to lie to me and still make me worry, she whispered. Hoofs sounded outside. 6 royal guards surrounded the cottage before she reached the door. Their captain stepped onto the porch holding iron restraints lined with silver. Sadie Whitmore, by order of the Royal Council, you are under arrest for interfering with the Alpha King's mind. The captain raised the silver-lined restraints, and every wolf inside Sadie went still. Those are not necessary, she said. That is not your decision. Then whose is it? The captain hesitated. The order in his hand carried the Royal Council seal, not Callum's personal mark. Sadie noticed. The Alpha King did not sign that. You can explain yourself at the hearing. He stepped forward. The bond beneath Sadie's ribs turned painfully cold, as if Callum were fighting something far away. She could resist and give the council exactly the story it wanted, or she could walk into their circle and force them to hear her. Sadie held out her hands. Do not tighten them. The captain looked almost embarrassed. I will not. The pack hearing began before sunrise in Blackridge's Great Hall. 12 banners hung above a stone circle built for disputes between packs. Alphas sat in the front row, betas behind them, and omegas stood along the walls. Sadie was placed alone in the center. No chair. No advocate. Everett Sloane stood beside Beta Garrick wearing a dark suit and the same silver council ring Sadie had seen in the vision. Sadie Whitmore, Everett announced, you are accused of concealing a rogue, using unregistered herbs, and manipulating the judgment of the Alpha King. Sadie looked around the hall. Laurel watched from the crowd. Garrick kept his eyes lowered. Which herb controls a king? Sadie asked. A few people shifted. Everett's smile thinned. You admit you treated him. I treated a wounded wolf. A wolf you knew was royal. Not at first, but later. Sadie felt the trap in the question. Later, I learned the truth because he changed in front of me. Whispers broke across the hall. Everett let them grow. And after learning his identity, you formed a bond with him. A bond formed. I did not order it. Convenient. The main doors opened. Cold air swept into the hall as Callum entered with 4 royal guards. He looked controlled, but Sadie felt the pain under his calm. The silver poison was worse. Everett bowed. Your Majesty, we were not informed you would attend. That was intentional. Callum's gaze found Sadie's restraints. His jaw tightened. Remove them. Everett raised one hand. The hearing has already begun. Interference may be seen as proof of compromised judgment. For one terrible second, Callum did nothing. Royal duty held him near the entrance while Sadie stood alone in the circle. The old hurt returned. Perhaps the throne would always speak louder than she did. Then Callum walked forward, but stopped outside the stone boundary. Proceed, he said. Sadie understood. He was giving her the room to speak for herself. Everett lifted a cloth bag from the evidence table. Inside were jars taken from her cottage. Silverleaf ointment. Wintergreen. Sage. All substances capable of affecting a wounded wolf. They are capable of cleaning a wound, Sadie said. You left out the soap. A few omegas near the wall hid smiles. Everett's expression hardened. You also removed this from the king's body. He held up the silver fragment. Sadie's pulse jumped. That was inside the trap wound. Or you placed it there. Then explain why it carries your council's seal. The hall fell silent. Everett turned the fragment before anyone could study it. A common royal mark. No, Sadie said. A council mark. 12 wolves around a crown. The same mark on your ring. Every face turned toward his hand. Everett slowly covered the ring with his sleeve. Callum's eyes became dark gold. Sadie continued before fear could stop her. Someone in the council poisoned him, then blamed the Omega who kept him alive. Everett's voice sharpened. You have no standing to accuse the crown. I am not accusing the crown. I am accusing a man hiding behind it. A murmur rolled through the pack. Everett moved to the final table. Then we will settle this according to old law. Her scent will be tested before the assembly. If it causes the king to lose control, her guilt will be established. Callum stepped into the stone circle. No, Everett faced him. Your Majesty, tradition requires it. Tradition does not permit forced contact. Two guards approached Sadie with a glass vial. The bond flared so strongly that the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Callum stood between them and her. His voice was quiet enough to make every alpha listen. Touch her without permission, and you answer to me. Touch her without permission, and you answer to me. Callum did not raise his voice, but the two guards stopped, as if they had hit a wall. Everett Sloane's expression remained calm. You are proving the council's concern, Your Majesty. No, Callum said. I am proving that consent does not disappear because an omega stands inside a hearing circle. A murmur moved through the hall. Sadie watched him carefully. The gold in his eyes was bright, but his hands remained open at his sides. The wolf wanted to protect her. The king was choosing how. Everett turned toward the seated alphas. The bond has compromised him. Old law allows the council to complete the test. Old law allows the accused to refuse, Sadie said. You left that part out. Beta Garrick finally lifted his head. She is correct. Everett looked at him with quiet warning. Garrick swallowed, then continued. A scent test requires voluntary submission unless there is evidence of immediate danger. There is evidence, Everett replied. The king vanished from his palace and spent several nights in her home. Sadie almost laughed. That proves he makes strange decisions. It does not prove I control him. A few people in the back failed to hide their reaction. Even Callum's mouth shifted slightly. Everett's patience broke. Then let the king declare what she is to him. The room went silent. Sadie felt the bond tighten between them. Callum looked at her, not the council. She is my mate. The words landed with more force than a shout. Several alphas rose. Omegas along the walls stared openly. Laurel went pale. Everett spread his hands. There. The matter is settled. Under royal tradition, the bond places her under your protection and authority. Claim her formally, and the hearing ends. Sadie's chest tightened. That was the trap. Everett wanted Callum to turn protection into possession in front of every pack. Callum slowly removed the black iron crown from his head. He set it on the edge of the stone circle. The bond gives me no authority over her body, her home, or her choices. Everett's face hardened. You would weaken the throne for one omega? A throne that requires her silence is already weak. Callum stepped beside Sadie, but he did not touch her. She may accept the bond, reject it, or ask for time. That decision belongs to her. Sadie looked at him. The betrayal had not vanished. Neither had the hurt. But this was the first time a man with power had stood beside her without speaking for her. I have not accepted anything, she said clearly. Callum nodded once. I know. Everett turned to the assembly. You see what she has done? The Alpha King places an unclaimed Omega above 12 packs. No, Callum said. I am placing the law above your convenience. He ordered the restraints removed. This time, no one challenged him. The captain unlocked the silver-lined cuffs, and Sadie rubbed warmth back into her wrists. Callum's gaze dropped to the red marks, and the wolf surfaced again. His breathing deepened. The bond pulsed through the hall, strong enough that nearby wolves lowered their eyes. Everett saw it and smiled. Control yourself, Your Majesty. Callum turned toward him. I am. For how long? Everett reached into his coat and broke a small glass vial against the floor. A bitter silver scent spread through the stone circle. Callum staggered. Sadie caught his arm before he fell. Cold pain rushed through the bond. The council members backed away as his eyes turned completely gold. Callum, she whispered. His hand closed around hers, not hard, but desperate. Move away from me. No, his body began to shift beneath the weight of the poison. Guards reached for their weapons, but Sadie stepped in front of him. Nobody moves. The giant black wolf appeared in the center of the hearing circle, trembling, confused, and surrounded by frightened alphas. A growl rolled through the hall. Then his gaze found Sadie. For one quiet second, Midnight recognized her. Everett pointed toward them. There is your proof. The king is no longer fit to rule. Midnight's growl faded when Sadie stepped closer. Around them, the hall had become a ring of frightened faces and half-drawn weapons. Put them away, she said. No one moved. Sadie looked directly at Beta Garrick. He recognized me. He is not gone. Garrick glanced toward Everett. The king is unstable. Because someone poisoned him in front of all of us. Sadie turned toward the shattered vial. Seal the room. Nobody leaves. Everett gave a cold laugh. You do not command this pack. Then Callum does. She rested one hand against Midnight's neck. The bond opened beneath her palm, and pain rushed through her like winter water. She saw flashes instead of memories, a locked royal chamber, silver powder mixed into medicine, Callum's father coughing beside an untouched cup, and Everett's council ring catching the firelight. Sadie nearly fell, but Midnight moved beneath her, holding her upright. Sadie. Garrick's voice sounded far away. What is happening? He is showing me. Another memory struck. Everett standing behind the old king's chair. A signed order hidden inside a black ledger. Callum being told his father died from a failing heart. Then years of poison, measured carefully, never enough to kill him. Only enough to make his wolf harder to control. Sadie pulled her hand away and gasped. Midnight lowered his head, exhausted. Everett was already moving toward the side door. Stop him, Sadie said. 2 guards blocked his path. He turned, anger finally breaking through his calm. You expect this assembly to accept visions from an Omega? No, Sadie replied. I expect them to accept evidence. She pointed toward his ring. There is a hidden compartment beneath the council seal. That is where you carried the powder. Everett's hand closed over it. Too late. Garrick stepped forward. Remove the ring. You have no authority over me. The king does. Garrick looked at Midnight. And until he can speak, I will protect his command. The guards took the ring and opened the narrow compartment beneath the silver emblem. Pale dust remained inside. The room went silent. Everett's expression changed. Not guilt. Calculation. You have proved nothing. The king is still unfit to rule. Midnight suddenly lunged against the bond, not toward Everett, but away from Sadie. He was losing himself again. Guards surrounded him and secured silver-lined chains around the stone pillars. Sadie protested, but Callum's wolf snapped at empty air, confused by scents and voices. We cannot keep him here, Garrick said. The royal holding chamber was built for this. By nightfall, Callum was confined beneath the palace, 40 miles north of Blackridge. Everett had been placed under guard, but 3 council members still argued that the throne should pass to an interim alpha before sunrise. Sadie entered the underground chamber alone. Midnight stood at the far end, chains loose enough to move, but heavy enough to remind him they were there. He did not recognize her this time. Sadie sat on the cold floor several feet away. You listened when I was lonely, she whispered. Now you are going to listen while I am angry. His growl softened. She moved closer, slowly, until her forehead rested against his. The bond opened wider than before. Pain, fear, and years of isolation poured through her. Sadie held on. You are not the poison. You are not the crown. You are Callum. In the deepest part of his memory, a final image surfaced. Everett handing the order to the hunter who placed the silver trap. Beneath his signature was a second name. Beta Garrick Hale. Beta Garrick Hale. Sadie pulled away from the bond, the name leaving her mouth like a warning. Midnight's dark gold eyes focused on her for one clear second. Then the chains went still. The memory had not lied. Garrick had signed the order beneath Everett's name. Sadie rose from the cold floor and ran upstairs, where the royal hall was already filling for the emergency transfer of power. 12 pack leaders stood beneath their banners. Everett waited under guard near the throne, looking far too calm for a man carrying poison in his ring. Garrick stood beside the crown with a sealed document in his hands. Until King Callum regains control, he announced, the Northern Alliance requires temporary leadership. By you? Sadie asked from the doorway. Every face turned. Garrick's expression barely changed. Miss Whitmore, you were told to remain below. So I would miss the part where you rewarded yourself. Murmurs spread through the hall. Everett's calm finally cracked. Remove her. No one moved. Sadie walked into the center aisle, holding the black ledger she had taken from the locked cabinet outside the holding chamber. Callum showed me the order for the silver trap. Everett signed it. So did Garrick. Garrick set the transfer document down. Visions are not evidence. That is why I brought this. She opened the ledger. Inside were dates, payments, and shipments of silver powder routed through Blackridge's infirmary. Garrick's name appeared beside each delivery. His face hardened. You do not understand what you are reading. Then explain it. Silence answered her. Everett stepped forward as far as his guards allowed. The old king was weak. Callum was becoming unstable. We protected the alliance. You poisoned 2 kings, Sadie said. You created the danger, then offered yourselves as the cure. A low growl rolled beneath the floor. The hall froze. The doors behind the throne opened, and the giant black wolf entered without chains. Sadie felt him through the bond before she saw him. Calm, tired, fully present. Midnight crossed the hall and stopped beside her. The pack leaders lowered their eyes. Garrick backed toward the crown. That creature cannot rule. The wolf shifted, and Callum stood in his place, pale but steady. He wore no royal coat, no weapons, only the black shirt and trousers provided by the guards below. Then it is fortunate, he said, that I am still a man. Everett looked toward Garrick. Do something. Garrick reached for the crown, but Callum placed one hand over it first. The Alpha King's eyes flashed gold. Not wild. Controlled. You will both face judgment before all 12 packs. Everett laughed bitterly. After what we did to your father, you would let us live? Callum's hand tightened around the iron crown. Sadie felt the wolf inside him demand revenge. She stepped closer, not touching him, only letting him know she was there. A king does not prove his strength by becoming what his enemies expected, she said. The room held its breath. Callum looked at Everett for a long moment. No secret punishment. No disappearance. Every charge will be read publicly, and every pack will hear the evidence. Garrick lowered his head as the guards took him into custody. Everett did not. His punishment was already beginning. The power he had spent years stealing was gone, and everyone he had manipulated was watching him lose it. Callum lifted the crown, then turned to Sadie. Instead of placing it on his head, he held it out to her. This throne was built on laws that failed you. Sadie looked at the crown but did not take it. Then changed them. I intend to. His voice softened. But I will not decide what comes after without asking you. Before the 12 packs, the Alpha King lowered the crown between them and said, Sadie Whitmore, when this is over, will you choose a future with me? Callum's question hung beneath the 12 banners, but Sadie did not answer it there. She looked at the crown between them, then at the people who had spent years deciding what an Omega should accept without ever asking what she wanted. Not in this room, she said. Callum's expression did not change, but the bond carried the quiet sting of disappointment. Still, he nodded. Then not in this room. He placed the crown on the throne and ordered the hearing to continue without her. That choice mattered more than any promise he could have made. Over the next several weeks, the alliance changed in ways no one had believed possible. Everett Sloan and Garrick Hale faced a public judgment before all 12 packs. Their titles were removed, their crimes entered into the royal record, and they were sent beyond Alliance territory under a binding law that prevented them from holding power again. It was not revenge. It was something colder and more lasting. They would live knowing the system they had twisted had survived them. Callum opened every hidden council ledger. He dismissed the leaders who had helped bury the truth and appointed representatives from every rank, including Omegas, healers, and pack members from the outer territories. Force-sent testing was outlawed. Mate bonds could no longer be used as proof of ownership. No Alpha could enter an Omega's home, claim their labor, or make decisions about their body without clear consent. Sadie attended the first council meeting in a simple blue dress and muddy boots because the road from her cottage had thawed badly. No one laughed when she entered. Laurel Dane even moved aside to let her pass. Sadie did not need an apology from everyone who had ignored her. She only needed the door to stay open for the next person they might have overlooked. Callum never asked her to move into the palace. Instead, he came to the cottage one cold Saturday morning carrying lumber, tools, and a wooden wash tub large enough to hold a horse. Sadie stared at it. That is ridiculous. The carpenter said it was practical. The carpenter is afraid of you. That does not make him wrong. They worked until sunset, repairing the porch and replacing the water-damaged boards near the fireplace. Callum followed every instruction she gave, even when she made him redo one crooked plank. When the work was finished, he stood beside the new tub with sawdust in his dark hair and no crown on his head. I meant what I asked, he said. Sadie leaned against the doorway. I know. I will not ask again unless you want me to. She studied the man who had once hidden behind a wolf because it was easier than being honest. He still carried the weight of a kingdom. He still had mistakes to answer for. But now, when power offered him the easier road, he chose the harder one. I am not choosing your throne, she said. I would never ask you to. I am not choosing the bond because it tells me to. Good. Sadie smiled. I am choosing the man who walked away when I told him to leave, then came back willing to listen. The bond warmed between them, gentle and steady. Callum held out his hand. She took it because she wanted to. Later that evening, midnight lay beside the fire while snow fell beyond the windows. Sadie lifted the old towel and pointed toward the new tub. You are still not allowed to flood my floor. The giant black wolf rose, stepped into the water, and sent half of it over the edge. Sadie laughed so hard she had to sit down. Callum shifted back, looking entirely unrepentant. You knew that would happen, she said. I hoped. Outside, royal guards waited beyond the fence, and 12 packs looked toward a different future. Inside, there was coffee on the stove, wet paw prints on the floor, and a king who had finally learned that being chosen was not the same as being obeyed. Sadie once believed people became invisible because they were not important enough to be seen. She understood now that sometimes the world simply grows comfortable looking past those who speak softly. Change begins when one person refuses to look away. Home begins when someone powerful knocks, waits for permission, and means it.